Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles, along with my co host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur Tracy Cowa. I have a special guest for you today, Robin Gagnon. Robin is the co-founder of We Sell Restaurants and WeSellRestaurants.com, the nation's largest restaurant brokerage firm and the only national franchise specializing in restaurant sales. She holds her certified business intermediary designation from the International Business Brokers Association, and also she has an MBA. She achieved her certified franchise executive designation from the International Franchise Association. She is the 2022 and 2023 IFA Women's Franchise Committee Chair. And she's got an incredible start, not only on 2022, but on 2023, which I want to hear all about, Robin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be here, Rebecca. Thank you for the invitation.
You've been
We're
on.
delighted to have you.
I know.
Yeah, it's exciting. And for someone so accomplished, I'm sure, Rebecca, you too as well, would love to hear about your non-linear journey into the franchise world.
So I'm so glad you asked me that because I really took a kind of a different start to franchising. So I finished my undergraduate degree and went straight into with my first husband a number of different entrepreneurial pursuits. They were successful, but I learned I didn't really know the business side of things. So fast forward a dozen years into small business ownership with multiple brands, one of which was a franchise. I went back to school and got my MBA and learned so much about the business world. My first marriage ended, my MBA was freshly minted, and off I went into Fortune 100 worlds, which was an entire new educational experience for me. Had a blast, did some great things, left my career as the VP of strategic marketing for Federated Department Stores, and my husband and I founded We Sell Restaurants. That was 21 years ago, and I just dove headfirst into the franchise industry to learn everything that I can. And today, We Sell Restaurants is in 45 states and it's the largest business brokerage franchise specialized in this restaurant space, where we help franchisors with transfers and even independent businesses as well.
It's a very precise niche. Did you just recognize that no one was really doing this? I mean, there are business brokers that are doing resales and going concerns, but you specialize and your organization specializes just in restaurants.
That is such a great question because I cannot tell you how many people told us at the offset what a mistake it was. They said, oh, you can do anything. Why would you limit yourself? But by just really investing in that single vertical and driving the knowledge and information in that space. And then as time progressed, we began to, because of that specialty, then just own the digital footprint for buying a restaurant or selling a restaurant. The discipline in the early days was tough, but we hung in there and believed that it being a single source of information for one vertical was better than being a jack of all trades and trying to sell everything. And the industry and time has proven us right.
Wow.
I'm big on niches. I just believe you become the best at one thing. Not only do you become more efficient and more effective, but you just flat out do a good job for your customers and those companies that you're helping sell.
Absolutely.
It's like the book Good to Great, right? What can you be the best in the world at? I love that. I love that. So you also are all about giving back to organizations with your time and your talent. And women's organizations. I'm a little curious what drives you to do that.
Well, I'm one of 5 girls in my family, and my father affectionately referred to us all as his boys. So we knew no limitations. We just knew we all had to work together. And, women are unique in that I believe that they are so empathetic and so trusting and just so kind to one another and nurturing given the opportunity. And the Women's Franchise Committee, the Women's Franchise Network, the work we do on Clubhouse, every single piece and part of what we collectively do for women in franchising is about lifting women up, giving them opportunities to share, grow, and develop and be mentored by others in the industry.
Beautiful.
It is an industry that is welcoming to women. And we really are folks that support one another. You know, I heard recently, I wished I could have been there when you gave this presentation, but I heard you did an incredible presentation called She's in Charge, how franchising brings out the best in women while women deliver the best in franchising. Tell me a little bit more about that and the research that went into that presentation.
I am so glad you asked about that. I presented at the women at the leadership conference in at FAM in September, and it came out of a request to IFA to say how many women are in leadership positions, how many women are in the C-suite, and they said, I'm not sure we can get to that number, and the bottom line was they couldn't, so they gave me the entire list of IFA current members, which didn't even designate whether they were male or female, and then their titles. And I literally went through and examined every single one. And sometimes you would have, for example, someone showing up whose name was Hunter. Is Hunter a man or a woman? Well, we would literally go on LinkedIn and say, it's a woman, and then assign the titles to them. And what that research really showed us, which was just an amazing statistic for women who want to grow in this industry. If you look at Fortune 500 companies, in 2021, the number of women running businesses on the Fortune 500 hit an all-time high of 41. That's just embarrassing at this stage of life. That's 8.1%. When I ran those same statistics and looked at women on the current IFA membership list who were CEOs, presidents, or founders of a brand, they showed up at a rate of 20.2%, 2.5 times the rate of the same thing in Fortune 500 brands. And that tells me this is just an amazing way for women to break through. There's no glass ceiling. There are no limitations. You're surrounded in atmosphere. You can have an idea and be a best-selling brand in 5 years' time. It just takes getting into the industry, learning it, and just not being afraid of any no's, just keeping on going.
Wow, wow, wow. Beautiful, beautiful. I have also a question, kind of a follow-up to that, about women in franchising and the different committees. I hear that there's a really interesting story behind how the Women's Franchise Committee that was developed.
So amazing. And hats off. There's actually a podcast out there that the Women's Franchise Committee does, talking with some of those initial women who got together in 1996, 5 of them, and said, gosh, there should be a committee about women in franchising. And they formed the first ever Women's Franchise Committee. And they not only formed the committee, they said, we're going to do something special. We're going to put on a leadership conference. We're going to put forward content that will be important to the industry. And they did that. And now here we are, 2.5 decades later, still following in their footsteps with the Women's Franchise Committee, 24 members on that committee, putting forth content at the annual leadership conference. And I'm just in awe of those first 5 women that said, we're going to make this happen.
Trailblazers. They're trailblazers, they're visionaries, they're pioneers that knew that this would bear fruit, I guess is the only way to describe it. So what do you think? We got 20.2% in founder positions, CEO positions, C-suite positions that are women in franchising. What do you think it is that's different about franchising and different about women in the franchise space rather than out in the open marketplace? Why do we succeed here? Why is it that we do well within the franchise space?
So one thing you actually referenced this a bit earlier when we joined the International Franchise Association. I can remember that our consultant at the time said to us, "This is the most generous giving industry," and I came out of those
Mhm.
Fortune 100 companies. We're still a little bit dog eat dog. There's just a level of competitiveness and more of everyone out for themselves. So I think that that's one piece of it. People in franchising are welcoming. They will open their doors. You can sit down. And I did this in my first 2, 3 years in franchising with 0 units or 1 unit. Someone with 1,000 units would sit down and buy me a cup of coffee and say, "Let's chat about this, Robin. I can help you. Hey, we did that. We went through this." So I think it's the generosity of the franchise community. And then the other piece is just the ability to be entrepreneurial. Nothing says no. Like, you have a franchise idea, make it happen. And you can. There are ways to launch that. There are launching pads to assist you. There are mentors that you can find in the industry. You'll be walked through the IFA as a first time attendee. You'll be asked to dine around. I mean, there is so much support within this community that you never hear no, you never hear that pushback. I think I just did a women's franchise or women in franchising event on Clubhouse yesterday, and our speaker was talking about women taking their power back. Sometimes your power is just diminished by those kinds of bumps in the roads and the no's or the discouragement that you hear. In franchising, it's different. No one tells you you can't. They just tell you how you can, and that's just part of what this industry is. It's one reason I'm so passionate about it.
That's so great. That's so positive. It's so proactive. So, Robin, can you give us a little bit of insight into maybe some of the factors that were impacting women in franchising this past year, 2022?
Well, I think a lot of women were trying to juggle, how do you manage this new workforce, right? Because we have a workforce of multiple generations. So we have Gen Z and Gen X, and at the same time, we have baby boomers. And now we have people who are working external to the company, and you're hiring external. How do you really live within this blended universe of leadership and evolve your skills to be relevant to the moment and give everybody what they need? It's almost become sort of like marketing, where you're supposed to meet the client where they are. You also have to do that as a leader now, as it relates to your employees. Where are they in their development, and where are they physically to you, so that you can help grow and mentor them? And that's not an easy task sometimes when folks are remote or they're across generations, and the younger generations don't have the opportunity to be side by side with someone who can help them learn so much more. So I think we're still sorting that out in the marketplace. And then I think women in franchising are still, of course, grappling with the other issues of just hiring and retaining the best possible talent, and finding a place where their talent can be recognized and utilized, and making the right choices again, so that they are able to hold on to their power and use it in a way that's appropriate for them, and make the right decisions about themselves long term, no matter where they are in their career. And I think the other thing that women are just so much better at than we were a few years ago is just giving ourselves a little grace and just saying, you know what, I may drop the ball a little bit there, but man, I really nailed it over here. And then having somebody else saying, "Yeah, you're right, atta girl." I'm constantly amazed, even on a platform like LinkedIn, where I will post something lifting up another woman. Like, I just recently posted
Yeah.
about our Crystal Compass winners, and so many women jump on and say, "You got this. Congratulations. Way to go."
Yeah, it's really is a nurturing, supportive, encouraging thing. You kind of hit on something. I wonder if we could dig in or ponder a little more. We're working more remotely today. When we were face to face and in the same offices, the elders could mentor and go side by side, sit down, have a cup of coffee, go into the conference room, chat about something, where we're sort of mentoring this younger generation. in the ways of entrepreneurship and franchising and business and teamwork and all of that. Today, when we're more remote and we got the baby boomers leaving, how are we going to step up as women for these younger generation that don't have quite as much access as maybe you did or others have? What can we do to help them? They're the next generation of owners, founders, CEOs. What can we do to support them?
You really just hit on just such a key principle. I'll tell you that one thing I did as chair of the Women's Franchise Committee, actually I started it as vice chair about 2 years ago, is the Women in Franchising on Clubhouse every Wednesday at noon. You just drop in, but it's not one person. It's not a interview type. I ask you a question, you answer it. It's this community. And so I think one thing that has to happen is we have to supplement these in-person events with as many places as possible that people can really gather and share information. And there are so many women I will run into now at events that'll be like, Robin, I was on Clubhouse. They didn't speak up, but they said it was valuable to me. So I think making those networking opportunities happen, because you're right. There were people I might have been terrified of in my 30s even. But if I was in the corner and looked like I had a question, I had plenty of people come over and go, you know what? You look like you could use an answer. Let's sit down over here and let me see if I can help you noodle that out. That's what our young people are missing through these remote experiences. So finding ways that we can supplement that, however that happens, through virtual communities, whether it's a social media platform like Clubhouse, whether it's through LinkedIn, and then just if you're remote, get into the communities as frequently as you can. That's why the women's franchise networks are so important. Go, mix, mingle, be social. Anything you're invited to, I would say get to that event, because if you step up and say, I need a mentor, someone's going to say, I'm in, hit me up. Here's my number. Let's talk. What do you want from me? And let's talk about it. People are they're still gracious and giving, but you may have to be a little bit more upfront about making sure you can be in the moment. You must be at convention. You must be at these FBN meetings and the Women's Franchise Network meetings, participate in Clubhouse, attend the Women's Franchise Committee meeting is open at conference and at September at the fan meeting when we're in person. Come and join us and just reach out. People are giving and will answer the call.
Right. There's so many like portals of entry into the ability to network with other people in the franchise industry. And I think you raised a really good point when you were talking about, this woman said, well, it impacted me, but I didn't speak up. What I find is that men will speak up immediately, sometimes when they're just reiterating something that someone else said, whereas a woman can have a really amazing, powerful point or something to contribute, or a question that maybe 5 other women in the room have, and they may not venture to speak up, right? They're still kind of reserved. And I think these forums that you're creating are so empowering for women. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. And I think you nailed it on the head. Women still don't come forward, but sometimes those opportunities are still not being created for them. I mean, I spoke at a conference last week, and I was up at 2:00 in the afternoon, and my panel, I moderated, and I had 3 amazing women on that panel. And when we got up to speak, and we were, I don't know, the 5th panel in, we were the first panel, we were the only panel all women. And we were only the second panel that had any woman be in representation. So we've also got to make sure we raise our hand and put ourselves forward to be these thought leaders and take advantage of the franchise community that's out there and say, I'll do that. One thing that I started doing as chair of the Women's Franchise Committee is that at each one of the franchise expos, we go out. I'm speaking at 2 out of 3 because it's a lot of travel and commitment, but I go out and do a gather other women on the stage, have them tell their stories and talk about their path in franchising, and make sure it's just about community and connecting everywhere you can. And maybe we'll meet someone or met someone at the New York Expo last year that was considering franchising for the first time and said, wow, I heard a woman up there talk about how their path led them into franchising, and I can do that too. And so you don't know what those ripple effects are. So you just have to keep pushing the message out.
Yeah. So you got into it a little bit. The Women's Franchise Committee, what are we up to in 2023? Do you have a theme? What is our focus this year? Tell us a little bit more about what we can expect from the Women's Franchise Committee.
So I mentioned that those initial visionaries, the 5 women that gathered in a room, the first thing they did was come up with this annual leadership conference, and it has been going on since that time. And so we put forward an amazing kind of mini conference inside IFA's conference. It's a separate registration, and it's a more intimate. There'll be under 400 people there, but we will have leaders on the spot, women and men, but we try to make sure it's primarily women who are talking about the things that they are facing. We do a case study, and this year's theme is leadership evolution. It's a state of mind, how to rethink and reinvent to stay relevant. And there's never been a time, as I look back on all the old titles for all of the annual leadership conferences, it's something kind of comes in, like everybody's talking about culture, or everyone's talking about remote learning, but overall, as leaders, if you don't evolve, you'll go the way of the dinosaur, right? And so our leadership is about how you're taking in the different elements around you within your state of mind and being committed to that continuous growth and evolving not only yourself, but those around you, so that you can accelerate these climates of learning and that's within service to your stakeholders, your community, and your business, because people are adapting and things are happening at a rate that we have never seen in our entire lifetime. And so if you're not evolving, if you're not growing and doing something new today, if you're standing still, you're already behind the competitor who's on your heels. So it's an incredible topic, and we're just super excited about it.
It's exciting for me as a behavioral scientist listening to you, because there's a marker in our psychographics called adaptability, which is one of 6 markers around grit, and it's also a marker under leadership, our ability to be leaders. So this idea that you've combined leadership and evolution, and the importance to be continued leaders, we have to evolve and change. And one of those things is we have to be comfortable adapting and learning and evolving. And as leaders, sometimes we do become complacent. We've arrived, we're here, we've got it all together, at least we think we do. And we forget that it is something that we have to continue to learn to do better at. It's a different audience, it's a different initiative, it's a new economy, we have competition. So we have to be able to adapt and evolve. And this adaptability thing is so big, because we've been watching it, especially through COVID, that people are actually less adaptable through COVID than they were before, which frightens me as a behavioral scientist, and encourages me that the Women's Franchise Committee is taking up this word evolution, which a piece of that would be, we have to adapt, we have to flex, we have to learn, we have to change through all of this. And if we don't, we're going to suffer from that. So this is exciting. I'm sorry, I'm getting on a bandwagon here, but this is exciting.
I love it. No, that's truly, as we were going through topics, we talked about, diversity or like all these other things. And we said that actually there's just something much bigger, and you absolutely nailed it, to make sure that if you're not adapting, you are standing still, and you're not going to be accelerating your own growth for your company. And that's what's critical. And you don't have time to sit still today.
No, And I would even suggest that you're not just standing still, you're going backwards if you're not evolving, you're not learning, you're not adapting. You may not notice it because you're standing still, but you are going to go backwards if you don't learn to evolve and change. So this is an incredible mantle that you ladies have taken upon yourself under your leadership. I'm really excited to see how that all goes. How's that going to bleed out to the Women's Franchise Network? Will the Women's Franchise Network take up that mantle also in some of their events, or are you going to encourage them to?
We absolutely will. So the Women's Franchise Committee, each network does programs at the local level, and I would love to see each one of them adopt an element of this, the leadership evolution mantle, and then build that out into separate separate presentations at the local level. Because there's so many great examples where people could speak to this, or you could even pull people like from one of our leaders on the spot or someone who spoke at that conference to have greater conversations after the fact. So because the conference is, we have lunch, then we have our leaders on the spot, then we have our case study. I mean, it's over in a minute. It's 11:30 to 3:45, and we could do 3 days on this topic and still be talking about how we have to evolve as leaders.
Yeah, that's really a fabulous topic because it hits an individual on all levels and no matter where they're at. And I think what struck me about this is that when we think of reinvention, reinventing ourselves, we always think, well, something happened first to force us to reinvent. But that doesn't really put us in a forward moving mindset. What that does is that actually encourages us to sit still, keep doing the same thing until some kind of trauma sets in or some kind of problem occurs, so to speak. But to be in that reinvention mindset or that leadership evolution is to remain in that growth mindset, not a fixed mindset, which is really, really important.
It absolutely is. And I'll give you a perfect example. I went to a conference like last week, and I was there on Thursday and Friday. And every time I attend a conference, there's just, I just feel like it's just this energy coming at me. And what am I going to take away from it? And so we are months into planning our annual conference for We Sell Restaurants, which is in May. And I came back just so energized and excited from this conference that I sat down and I reworked the entire agenda. And I had a meeting first thing on Monday morning, called the executive team in, and I said, look, this is how we're going to rework conference. But I didn't just say, oh, we're reworking conference. What do you think? I had literally mapped out. Here's every single segment. Here's how it's going to be led. Here's the contribution each party will make and how we'll all do this together. And instead of getting a pushback, they were so thrilled and excited, and they really saw it as, yeah, we just reinvented this thing, and we're all in on it. So that's what happens when you're exposed to these new inputs. And we spoke earlier about maybe not being in the office. How do you get that? So I would say again, get on the road, get out there and talk to people, get engaged with things, and let them feed that energy to you, because it'll get your brain moving and get some exciting things happening for your brand.
Yeah, it's inspiring. People will plant seeds within you that then you can take to your own companies. So I am 100% behind you on that, Robin, that we need to connect. We need to be face to face. We need to be these events. And if not, the second best, of course, is the clubhouses and the Zooms and the phones and those kinds of ways. But it's so important because we are more together than we are alone, and ideas come out of there. So I want to get a little personal here, Robin. Yeah, your dad said these are my 5 boys, and it was kind of a going kind of joke. Do you think anything in your upbringing allowed you to be an individual that naturally steps up into leadership roles, that sees a gap and says, you know what, I think I have what it takes to fill that gap. And even if I don't, I'm going to learn how to fill the gap. that feels compelled to step up to leadership roles? Because you consistently do that. You step into these leadership roles. What is it about you inside or from external whatever that allows you to do that?
Oh my goodness, what a great and insightful question from somebody who's looking at these leadership characteristics and traits. I was a family of 5 girls, second, the middle child. My family, quite frankly, just didn't have a lot. We were, just we had to work hard for what we had. I started working at a very young age. My first job was at a community drugstore. I made $1 an hour. I don't even know how you got away with that, and I had a work permit. But my father was an entrepreneur. He owned his own business. It's very interesting. He was a cabinet maker, and someone sent me a couple of years ago where he had branding, like a brass tag inside some cabinets that he had made for him that was my father's. And I was like, oh my gosh, my dad was a branding expert, 50 years ago. I didn't even know that he did that. So I do think we were continuously challenged to be the best that we could absolutely be. All of my sisters have, gone on. I have a sister that's got a PhD, and two sisters with master's degrees, and I have my MBA. And my parents, quite frankly, never even finished high school. So they pushed us to go farther in life than they went, but they were also entrepreneurial. Both of them had their own business. And so they taught us that you can still succeed. So I think there's a piece of me that will always be focused on being in service to others, because I know what it feels like to, be growing through your experience, and also be pushing myself to be the best that I can be, because my father was a huge influence on me to just tell me to get out there and get to it. And I'm still doing it. And I still hear his voice in my head, even though he's been gone many years now.
Wow. I have someone in my head who's been past 12 years, is my former husband. So I know that voice, right? That when I don't know an answer, my question is, what would Lou do, right?
Mm.
And what would he say in this circumstances, and how would he handle that? So even today, a mentor, and it sounds like your dad is similar.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, Tracy, I want to ask Robin one more question. Since we're on this leadership evolution platform this next year, and I'm going to encourage women to really get involved. What 3 attributes, or more, but give me 3 attributes of a good leader from your perspective? How would you define leadership?
So the first term that comes to mind is agile, right? You
Yes.
have to be looking at the things around you at this higher mindset, and be adaptive and agile to the environment. And so that involves looking inward at yourself, externally to your team, and then in a much bigger place, externally to the environment and the world views, how you're going to be affected by things that are happening on the world stage. So I think that having that mindset, being humble, knowing what you don't know. I am still hiring people. I'm going right now through a massive computer upgrade. I've owned my own software for business brokerage. We built it ourselves for 15 years. I'm going, and I know that software like the back of my hand, but it's time for it to be upgraded. And so I didn't attempt to do that on my own. Know what you don't know. I brought someone in, an expensive resource, to say, you're going to be my chief technology officer for the period of time it takes to deliver something that's going to be world class, because it's beyond my beyond my skill set. So be agile, and then know what you don't know. And then I would say that the third piece is to just engage and be involved around you with people in your same community. Find others that you can collaborate with, and engage and be involved.
I love those. I took notes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I took notes. Oh my gosh. Tracy, before I ask for your final thoughts, I want to echo back. I mean, everything you're involved in, the Women's Franchise Committee, the WFN, the Women's Franchise Network, your franchise organization itself, We Sell Restaurants, you are a reflection of those three attributes. And the needing to be agile and quick on your feet and notice things around you and be willing to change and be willing to evolve, and then the humbleness, knowing when don't know something, and asking for help, and then being fully and completely immersed and engaged, because it's in those relationships that we are not just inspired but empowered in many ways. So I want to applaud you for taking up this mantle, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where We Sell Restaurants goes and where the Women's Franchise Committee will go. Tracy, any final thoughts from you?
You know, just reflecting on those three words, agile, humble, and engaging, I I really have this word of proactivity that keeps coming to mind as well. And I think because that's kind of like that social intelligence where how people view you, how people view another person. And as I'm hearing Robin throughout this whole interview, I keep hearing this concept of how she's just not okay with the status quo, but it's more than that. Because what you do is roll up your sleeves and you actively find a better way, whether it's having to take on this massive project of studying data to understand the number of women in franchise, or whether it's like getting this incredible download from God, like to rework the conference. Like there's this element of you being open to not doing things the old way and you implementing and not just talking the talk. It's walking it. And it's beautiful. I applaud you for that. And I just had to share that.
Oh, the two of you are so amazing. Thank you so much. Gosh, you're so gracious in your words. And this will just feed my soul for the week and just bring me so much that then I hope I'll be able to share out with others. So thank you so much for your very gracious words.
Thank you.
We're 100% behind you, girl. Anything we can do to help, let us know. We'll get the word out. In the meantime, how do others that are listening to this podcast get hold of you, learn more about the WFN, the Women's Franchise Committee, also, and We Sell Restaurants? How do they get hold of you?
Our website, wesellrestaurants.com, will get you straight to everything about our brand. And of course, there's a subdomain that will take you to information about our franchise. Anyone that wants to reach me can reach out to Robin, ROBIN, at wesellrestaurants.com. That's restaurants with an S.com. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn, always talking about issues about women in franchising. So definitely connect with me, please, and direct message me. And I get questions all the time. How do I get engaged? Attend a local WFN. Join us when you can on noon. You don't have to look great. You don't have to makeup done, nothing. You just jump on to Clubhouse and engage in the conversations and share what's happening there and get to know people. And come and see me. You see me at conference, come up, give me a hug and let me know. Let's talk and let's be a friend.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you, Robin. Again, appreciate you being here. And for those of you listening in today to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships are forged, we're glad you joined us. We'll see you next week for another episode.